For more on all this, let's bring in political analyst Bill Crane. Bill, great having you. Bill, if the U.S. government actually shuts down, which essential functions are on the chopping block first, and who pays the price?
Well, essential services will not be curtailed. That's things like U.S. military, public safety, infrastructure, a certain amount of employees at the Social Security Administration, Medicare, Medicaid, because those checks will continue to roll. But all other federal employees would be either furloughed or, in the case of what President Trump is saying, a massive layoff, which loss of budget or tight budget times is a grounds for termination. It's being used as leverage with Democrats because in Washington, D.C., a large percentage of the bureaucracy lives in the Metro D.C. district and area in Virginia and Maryland, and they are Democratic voters. So the president's trying to leverage that to break loose a handful of Democratic votes to get a deal cut by Wednesday. Otherwise, Wednesday evening, we'll start the shutdown.
Bill, we'll come back to this, but first I'd like to know, could the looming shutdown be a deliberate play to reshape federal power and spending?
There are three versions of compromises out there. There's a Republican version, a Democratic version, and Rand Paul, who's a Republican, offers a third version that cuts spending across the board and implements something of a 1% national sales tax. I don't think any of three of those are going to be moved on by Wednesday. And any of the three of those that are agreed to only extend this deadline for funding for another 7 weeks. So we'll be back at this before the end of the year. Interestingly, the president and the Republican Party, who typically were opposed to large increases in the debt ceiling, pushed some rather large debt increases forward at the time Donald Trump was coming into this second term, didn't get them, and are very aware that the ability for them to move their agenda forward after they pass the big, beautiful bill to fund the programs that are in there, they need an operating federal government. Immigration and naturalization services would continue, which is one of the linchpins of the Trump administration's anti-crime and immigration movement.
And Bill, within what you described, who really holds the cards to avoid the collapse?
Democratic senators in Washington, D.C. There are about 8 of them that have spoken to circumstances upon which they'd vote yes. But a 7-week extension really doesn't mean much. So I think the president will have to give a little bit more in the healthcare area. Extension, which wasn't funded in the big, beautiful bill on the Affordable Care Act, subsidies for lower and middle income Americans and their healthcare premiums to get the votes that he needs to get a debt ceiling lift by Wednesday or even later.
I see. I want to go back to something we spoke about earlier. If mass layoffs replace furloughs, how radical is that shift? And what message is it sending about federal governance?
There are so many norms that this president has tossed to the side. I've been doing political analysis and commentary for 25 years, including the president's first term. So we can't really speak of him and compare him in much of a substantive way to prior administrations. But he's already made substantial federal employee cuts, not the Defense Department, but the federal civil service workforce is about 400 million. There are several of those cuts made earlier that are pending in court and on review, but we're somewhere between 300,000 and 400,000 positions that have already been eliminated. So it reduces the ability of the federal government in many areas to service the public, as you referenced in your correspondent reference. Things like the national parks will be shut down immediately or will only be accessible for daylight hours because of safety issues.
And Bill, if I'm getting you right, is this shutdown serving as a strategic reset for the administration? Is it redefining the size and role of government?
That is what Donald Trump attempted to do, hasn't done yet. He certainly intends and is shrinking the federal government, but I really think this is actually more of a political battle. And again, this president kind of enforcing his will and expanding the reach of the executive branch.
Bill Crane, thank you for your time and insights. Great having you.